Good afternoon and good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Gill, and I'm the Director of Global Product Marketing, and I have Shannon Snowden with me, Senior Technical Architect with Zerto, and today we're going to talk about what's new in 4.5. So this just went GA last week, so it's hot off the presses, and it's a really exciting release for us, and I think you'll be really excited too. Two quick housekeeping items before we move on from the introductory screen. In the panel that showed up for me on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a handouts tab there. So I put in the What's New data sheet, and there are a couple of case studies. And there's also a questions tab. So if you have any questions, just type them in there. We will read them to the audience and then answer them. I will take one question that I know we're going to get is this being recorded? Yes, it is. And we posted the end of the week. So if you go to Zerto.com and the resources tab up at the top, you can sort by recorded webinars, and you'll find it there at the end of the week. Okay, so let's get started. So how Zerto revolutionized disaster recovery? In case anyone's new there, one thing that Zerto recognized is that replication was really in the wrong place. You had this great virtualization strategy for your servers, the network getting started to pick up steam and get virtualized as well, and then you had this physical replication device. And that was really undermining your investment in virtualization. You're probably replicating too much storage, you probably needed a lot more bandwidth, and it just wasn't extending that virtualization strategy. So Zerto recognized this and pulled replication from the storage layer into the hypervisor so that you now have alignment across your entire IT environment. So now you have software-defined replication and recovery, and it's automated as well, and we'll talk about that to make sure that processes execute consistently and correctly in the time of a disaster. So if we look at virtual replication 4.5, so first, no lock-in. So we work with different hypervisors. We work with different kinds of storage. We want to make sure that we're removing barriers to innovation. And you can see we have quite a few partners up there that we work with. And we have a special relationship with HP. And I don't know if it's special, but I say that just because Shannon, who's on the call, has done a lot of work with them around APIs. So Shannon, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Thanks, Jen. So before HP Discover in London last year in December, we worked quite hard with HP in order to come up with using Zerto APIs with HP's operations orchestration tool to fully automate failover testing for Zerto. So we have that as an available package. You can go to hpln.com and download HP Orchestration, Operation Orchestration Studio, and just download the Zerto content pack for that, and it fully automates failover testing. And we'll be adding more packages to that capability as we go along, but it really falls into this concept that we started a few versions back, but 4.5 really starts to solidify that as far as the harmonized piece of leveraging more and more APIs for different portals, different platforms, and essentially letting whatever works for you and your organization to be able to still leverage Zerto's replication and orchestration in those tools.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. So, of course, protect. So we are a disaster recovery solution. That's how we got our start. So, of course, we're going to ensure that workloads and data is available to end users, to protect revenue, to protect employee productivity, and to protect the brand of your company. And you'll see that little tiny, looks like a little piece of paper all the way to the right there. That's a recovery report that you get at the conclusion of a disaster recovery test. And as Shannon mentioned, if you have operations and orchestration from HP installed, you'll actually get that report in your inbox in the morning after you've executed that test. So consolidation, so Zerto, one of the use cases that we found, actually our customers brought it to us because we move information so seamlessly within the hypervisor. They said, hey, I bet this would be great for migrations. So we want to make sure that you're able to take advantage of any new hardware in your environment faster to accelerate your ROI there and really share services across your entire environment. It's a great first step to cloud is disaster recovery. So if you're looking at cloud, and a lot of you are, because you're thinking about how can I reduce costs, how can I get a little bit more flexibility in my environment, how can I get an on-demand resource if I need it. So if you do disaster recovery to a cloud, this is a great first step to really put the environment through the paces. Because with a disaster recovery test, it's going to be more like how you're really going to use the environment versus backup as a service where you're kind of just throwing information there, having it be stored. You're not really putting it through the paces like you would in a production environment. Disaster recovery gets you quite a bit closer to that. And we have managed service providers if you'd like to have a little bit of a relationship there and you want to have someone that you can call. So like ILAM, BlueLock, all of those guys. And if you want to do a little bit more yourself, so that's when you can partner with Amazon, because we do enable replication to public cloud through Amazon as well. So in simplicity, this is what I hear the most from our customers is they had this really complex, awful disaster recovery process, a run book that's 1 to 2 binders thick, and now they have this really simple solution where it's 5 clicks and they fail over. And that's the real goal of Zerto Virtual Replication, because when your environment's down and people are panicked and they're trying to get to you to say, I can't get to this application, I can't close this deal, we can't run this report, that's not when you want to be opening up a binder and starting to execute your one of 7,500 steps. With Zerto, we automate that process, and because we are hardware agnostic, hypervisor agnostic, and able to go to public cloud, we remove barriers to innovation. So now if you want to try that new flash array, you can. You don't need to have matching storage environments. And in fact, this is a way that many of our customers try out a new technology, again, is through DR, just like disaster recovery to the cloud is a good way to evaluate a cloud service provider or cloud just generally. Using a new type of storage or a new environment as a target site for DR is also a great way to evaluate it for production. And we have a lot of customers that actually get new hardware put at the DR site, run tests for a month or two, they get comfortable, then they flip it. And their new shiny DR site becomes production, and the older sites that they have for production becomes DR. Okay, so if we look at a typical data protection solution, if you look at a backup, you're executing those at night. So say something happens around 4 or 5 o'clock, someone says, I deleted a file, I get hit with a virus, something happened, I can't get to this information, can you give me my last copy? And you'll say, well, I can give you the copy from midnight. And if this person's been working on it all day, that's probably not what they wanted to hear. Maybe you do snapshots. So you're doing those every 4 hours or so. We have customers who used to use snapshot for DR. Now they set it just for backup because snapshots can put quite a bit of overhead on the environment. So it is a little bit better than your typical backup. You might only lose 3.5 or 4 hours worth of data, but depending on your business, that could be a lot of money. So for example, we have a customer that's a law firm, they have 300 lawyers. If they were to use 300 lawyers worth of work times the $300 to $500 that they charge their clients times the 3 hours, that would be quite an impact to their business. So this is really going to lead to some data loss, either a lot or really a lot, and then some downtime. So with Zerto, we do continuous block level replication. So we're replicating as I/O is created. We make a copy of that before it leaves the hypervisor, and then send that over to the target site. So you'll see, every few seconds there's going to be a checkpoint within the environment that you can fail over to. So if something were to happen, if a file were to get deleted or to get lost, you no longer have to tell that person, well, all the work you've done today is gone. Now they're able to recover from just a few seconds ago. So they're going to lose probably nothing, maybe the last couple of sentences that they wrote, but you're really going to be able to preserve their productivity and all the work that they did. So how does this work? So I'm going to talk through it a little bit on the slide, and then I turn it over to Shannon, and he'll give you a demo. So the restore request. So within the user interface, you're going to select the virtual machine, your point in time, and start to mount that disk. One thing that's important to note if you have Zerto Virtual Replication, you'll know that there's a virtual replication appliance on each host within the environment. That's still the same infrastructure. We don't now require an agent or anything extra. It's exactly the same infrastructure, and you're still able to get to this level of granularity. So once you just locate the disk, and then you pick the file folder, so now what do you need to restore? Is it a file server, application, a database? So you just select that, and then you're able to instantly restore just seconds before the file was deleted. So and this is all done very quickly. Shannon's had to do this in a backup scenario before, so we can talk a little bit more to how that experience would look like otherwise. But with Zerto, it really takes just a few minutes, and you'll see that in the demo now. And so Shannon, I am going to pass the presenter ball to you. So make presenter.
All right.
All right.
Good.
Coming your way.
All right. And while we're getting switched over, had a couple questions on the link to where the HP operations orchestration. I posted two. I posted the overall content about it, but then I also posted the community edition one, which is a free download. And then once you're in that community edition download, I put that in the question section, the answers for everyone. Just go to the content catalog and look for Zerto, and then you'll find our package. All right, so looks like hopefully everyone's in my screen now.
Yes, we can see it.
All right, so let's do this is an update webinar, so if you haven't seen this screen before or seen creation of virtual protection groups or any of our other 4.0, 4.5 webinars, then please check those out, go to Zerto.com and check out those webinars that'll take you through the creation of VPGs and other processes. What I want to focus on here is what we're going to do a file level recovery through the journal file level restore feature that's new in 4.5, just to show you just how seamless it is to other operations. So it's the same user interface you would use to do your failover testing, your failover, all of your monitoring of your environment. That's all the same tool. As Jennifer said, there's no agents, there's nothing extra added. It's just simply in the user interface here, I go down to Actions, and I have another button, and it's Restore File. So I go through the wizard, as everything with Zerto is wizard-based. It's very, very easy to work with and to not have intricate details of things because you're not perhaps looking at a DR product all the time. So I'm just going to select a virtual machine in a virtual protection group that's protected, and I want to pull a file from it is what I'm going to do here. And I can do this from any point in time in my journal, so I can just pick a point in time previous to this one. I could so that, you know, let's say we're avoiding corruption, or there's some reason where we're pulling that file back. Maybe at that point in time the VP hadn't deleted their spreadsheet, you know, something like that. So the next thing it's going to do is it's going to mount the disk, and then I just tell it to start the mount. So what it's doing is it's going to say, hey, it may take a few minutes depending on the size of the disk, but I've specified if I had multiple disks, I could specify which disk I want to pull the file back from. And as I say in my interface, it's doing a mount, and then once it's complete, then it will present me with the ability to open the files. So again, this is just easy use type of stuff that we've added in, and features that don't fundamentally change what you do daily with the interactions and everything. It's just another feature that allows you the whole resiliency idea, being able to do this quickly. So now we see I have a running task. I've got a little folder here, so I'm just going to open the folder. And what it's going to do is it says, okay, I've got that mounted now, and where do you want to go to grab the file? And what I'm going to do is just go into my file system. I'm going to go into my administrator user account because that's the file, the CSV file that's very important to pull back. See, this is a simple click what you want to restore type of situation where it's very, very easy, very intuitive. And there's a simple tree that I go down to my documents there. And I keep drilling in, and finally I'll see a little CSV file that, for whatever reason, has become corrupted or missing. So now what I'm going to do is just hit next, and it's going to download it to any location that I want. So this is just going to pull it to my documents folder, and I'm just saving it locally. It could be to a map drive. This could be a database. So think of the different use cases that you could use a simple file level recovery from the journal. So now it's downloaded, as we see down here in the bottom. I could go see the CSV file, and there it exists. I can double click on it and then associate something to open up. There we go. And that's recovered from a point in time, from the journal, through the Zerto user interface. And when I'm done, then I'm back to my running task, and I've got a little stop button. What's going to say is to shrink out this disk. And I'm going to say yes, because I'm completed my recovery of that file from the journal. And it's because it's, could be up to 14 days point in time. So that gives me a lot more flexibility for protecting my data and being able to recover it quicker, maybe than having to go to different tools such as a backup to pull that file up and to recover it using a separate tool, maybe using a lot more cumbersome process. So all this does is it adds just a really cool feature to, and gives you a lot more power and flexibility to an already powerful tool for your data protection. So, all right, Jen, I see we got questions, and we can transition back over to your presentation now.
We have lots of questions. So the first one I can answer, it says, someone's asking, are we going to do physical environments, or do we support physical environments? And no, we don't. We support only virtual environments. So it looks like this is a partner who might have a client. They don't want to convert to virtual. We can only help them if it's virtualized. So,
well, one thing I would say there is we have had in the past, because I've had to do this myself in the past, is if you've got a client that just absolutely wants to stay physical, depending on how badly they want to get out of where they are, they will allow you to do a P2P, let you use Zerto to replicate it, and then go V2P at the target site. Now, you're using us as a utility for your replication and your actual failover or migration, but at least it gives you that flexibility of not having to forklift servers necessarily to get, if you're doing like a data center migration. So you can still use us, and we have in the past, I know personally I've had this happen a few times to where they're okay with you using virtualization to transport it, but for whatever reason they want. And it could be the relationship with the application provider absolutely has to have on physical. Then you just take it back to V2P in final processing. So that is an option, even though, as Jen's correct, we don't support physical directly, but we can still be utilized if you're in that scenario.
Okay, and then someone's saying, does the file restore support Linux?
Not in this version, but it does. It is in the roadmap. It's Windows-based VMs currently.
And can you review journal checkpoints consolidation given the longer journal history option?
Let's see. I'm looking for that question. I'm trying to put the question in context. Are we one or?
This was one of the early ones. It was about 10 minutes ago.
Okay, journal checkpoint consolidation. So actually what happens is in the journal, the flow actually goes from the source site into the journal, and then the journal is written. Once you build up whatever the journal history is, then it's a first in, first out situation. So it's not a classical, after a period of time, consolidate all the checkpoints. It's actually, think of it as a process of it moving through the journal and being committed to the disk. So that's the way that's the way you want to think about how Zerto's journal functions with the disk.
Okay. And then what happens when the application runs on multiple servers? So SharePoint on one VM, SQL Server on another?
Well, this would be our classic, from a recovery standpoint, if we're not talking file level, then you would need to mount, each one and pull the files back if they were on separate machines, because as you saw in the demo, this is a mount the disk and pull out what you need and restore them. Now, if it is a case where you want to do multiples, your better bet would be just to do a failover at the point in time for the whole protection group and then bring all of them back by reverse protection. And this can be done very quickly. It sounds like longer because traditional thinking is with geographic separation that this is a long process, but we've got customers with RTOs for single application groups that may take them 3 minutes to fail it over and have it up and running. So this is a very quick thing. So if you've got data spread across multiple servers, you'd want to leverage the VPG, take the entire VPG to a checkpoint, because as a reminder, there's an important component of virtual machines in a virtual protection group. There's what we call write order fidelity that's between those virtual machines, so they'll all come back at the same time. So if I need to pick them back up 10 days ago or 5 days ago, they'll all wake up consistent with each other. So if you're going across multiples, that's probably a better way to go.
Okay. So someone said, did Shannon just state that Zero can only back up Windows VMs and not Linux VMs? And no. That's the journal file level recovery, so that little demo that Shannon just did, that only works on Windows-based VMs. Zerto will support that capability for Linux-based VMs, but that's not until a future release.
Right, so let's be very clear on that. So the disaster recovery, the migrations, everything that we support through 4.0 with Linux machines, those are all still supported. We're talking about this one little feature that we've added in 4.5 for recovering a single file. So we want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah.
Now, if those are Linux machines in a VPG, to my previous scenario of just recovering the entire VPG, that works just as it always has.
Yeah. Okay, and someone said, during the disk mount, will protection still be running for that disk? Other files will continue to be updated? So I can answer that question. That's yes.
Yeah.
So whenever we build a feature into Zerto Virtual Replication, we don't want to interrupt anything about your protection strategy. So that's absolutely still protected. So someone asked, there's a lot of questions, Shannon, as you can tell. So is there integration to VSS, or how does it handle open files if there's any specific support for such a scenario?
Well, we do support VSS. So if you may have not seen it in the demo, but there's VSS consistent checkpoints. So those checkpoints are available as well.
And does this process differ for cloud service providers?
No, it's going to be the interface or the portal that you're using may be different, but the functionality is going to be available to everyone that's running 4.5.
Okay, and where is mounted that disk? So I think they want to say, the mounted disk for the recovery process, where is it mounted? In what VM?
In the ZVM at the target location.
Okay. And sorry, the questions just jumped because they're asking them so fast. Do you work with host agents to provide for database crash and application consistent backup points? So VSS again.
Yeah, that would be VSS. There's no as far as host agents, we're not running any agents on the host.
Okay. And here we go. Oh, someone asked, does Zero support multi-hypervisor replication, VMware at one site and Hyper-V at the other? And yes, that was added in 4.0. So you can have VMware to Hyper-V, Hyper-V to VMware. We can do VMware to different version of VMware, Hyper-V to different version of Hyper-V, and VMware or Hyper-V into AWS. So asked, does Zerto work with SRM? So you don't need SRM once you have Zerto because we have at least all the features of SRM or more. We do the non-disruptive testing, consistency groups, as well as the commit before rollback, and there's many other features. So you don't need SRM. And people are asking about the migration path for upgrades, Shannon, from 3.5 and 4.0 to 4.5. So I know you did this in your lab.
Yes, I went from 3.5 to 4.0 to 4.0 to 4.5, and I would recommend the path is the recommended path is 3.5 to 4, 4 to 4.5.
Okay. Someone wants to know, as a service provider, can I run 3.5 and 4.5 together?
You can. The Zerto version should be should work together. Now you're not going to have in the 3.5 the the 4.5 features.
Okay. Okay, so can Zerto handle different hardware, specifically CPU? We have a case where vMotion doesn't work because of different CPUs.
Right. We traditionally have handled that very, very well. So it's a matter of if you think about our process of what we're doing, we have the VMDKs. We ask the vSphere at the target site, the vCenter, to create a VM with these settings and attach this disk to it. So typically, the CPUs we haven't run into that as being a big issue. But I do understand what you're talking about as far as vMotion. You can have some real CPU constraints depending on how different the hardware is.
As a service provider, can the end user perform file level recovery from the self-service portal?
That would be a setting that you would allow or disallow, and it'd be a service that you would allow or not. So it is granular where you could allow them to do it, or if you want to wait, you can as well.
And then we'll do one last upgrade question, and then we'll move on and we'll answer some of the, because I think there's some questions around permissions and things like that. So I think we'll get to them in the upcoming slides. So, but if we don't, well, I'll still go through the questions as well. So someone wants to know, what happens with Zerto 4.0 VPGs if we upgrade today to 4.5?
Yeah, so I think the question there is around if we're doing the upgrades, what about the journal? The new checkpoints are added as you're doing the upgrades that would allow the 4.5 features of journal file recovery. So just think of it as the new ones are added into the journal, that features such as journal file recovery, healthy journal, those things that we'll be talking about in this are available.
Okay, great. So let's move on in the presentation. So to conserve space, we've added some features around the journal, compression and things like that, and Shannon will offer some more details.
All right. So in this version, at the target site, Zerto's journal, by the way, is always at the target site. So in this version, we are doing something a little bit more efficient for storage purposes, is we're compressing the journal. So before version 4.5, the journal was, the traffic was compressed as it came across, but when it arrived at the target site, it was decompressed. And so what we developed was the ability to compress the journal yet retain the functionality, and also not pay an overhead in speed for failover testing, failover, and move operations. So we've been able to do that, yet keep the journal compressed. And essentially what that brings is about a 60% savings in the journal space overhead, to where when you're doing your calculations for space, you can average around a 10% production overhead for the journal itself. Now, of course, that is dependent upon the IOs involved of the source VPGs, but as an average, you should see about a 60% savings. And if you're a large service provider or a large enterprise, this could become a fairly significant amount of disk space that you're saving by us being able to compress the journal.
Oh, and simplified deployment. Yep, I went on mute because I'm in a room where it's noisy. So simplified deployment, Shannon, over to you.
All right. So the simplified deployment of by VIBs, now, for those of you that have installed 4.0, since this is the 4.5 update webinar, if you recall, you needed root passwords for all the hosts. Well, now you don't. And so we're able to allow for more seamless, more security, all the benefits of not needing a host password in order to work with your replication software. So now we're just using bibs, and we're able to you can do bulk upgrades, for example, and you won't need the passwords. So this is a well-received feature that's new in 4.5.
Okay, great. And I think there's one more, Shannon, because the next one's APIs, and you did a lot more with the APIs than I have done.
Okay. Okay, so the new APIs in 4.5 are pretty significant, really, because they are the create and manage VPG APIs. So you're able to create virtual protection groups, add virtual machines to them, and modify the settings of the VMs in a VPG. So you can change network, you can change storage. You can really, through APIs now, do the provisioning component of your VM protection. So if you're doing things already, scripted, DevOps, API type of approach, then these APIs allow you to trigger automatic VM protection, for example, by pulling the Zerto APIs, creating VRAs and VPGs, and adding VMs to them. We also allow you to deploy VRAs via API. So now you can start envisioning, I can get Zerto up and running, and then I can protect VMs, and I can modify VMs, and I can monitor all the VMs already with existing APIs. I'm really filling out the lifecycle of that harmonized sort of mentality of seamlessly between different platforms being able to manage Zerto Virtual Replication.
Okay, and a question came in on APIs, Shannon. So will the APIs be made available for other tools such as SaltStack?
So our APIs are available with the product, and we have a great API guide. I've gotten feedback from different folks who've used it. The usage guide is very well written with great examples in it of how to use it. So those APIs are available with Zerto through 4.5, all of them are.
Okay, great. And then, so role-based access control. So since I can tell we have a couple of cloud service providers based on the questions, so this is a feature that's integrated into the Zerto Cloud Manager. So it leverages Active Directory, and it really helps you control what certain users can do, what certain users can see, and what certain users can't do. So the type of role, so there's admin, so this is someone who can do, absolutely everything in Zerto. There's a builder, so someone who can create and modify VPGs. There's a user. This is someone who can do like a failover test, an actual failover, a move, a migration. And then, of course, there's view. So that's someone that they can go in there and look around, but you don't want them to touch anything. So I would be a view user as an example. So and these can be limited at certain things. So you can have a site level. So you can have a site level admin. With a logical organization, you can have maybe a builder who can just do things within a certain Zorg. And then you can also get as granular as a VPG. So this is to really help cloud service providers and our larger customers. We do have enterprise customers who have many sites and they use the Zerto Cloud Manager because it really simplifies management for them. But this just gives you a little bit more help, really, in how you can limit certain people or give other people free rein into what they can do in terms of disaster recovery. Shannon, anything to add there?
Well, it certainly, again, demonstrates this this harmonized idea of being able to take the role-based access permissions, bring them over into more of a Zerto-centric tool, and because we're starting to go across multiple platforms, we can't really specifically depend on any one of them in their role-based access control. So this is just the evolution, as we say in the name of the deck here, of the product itself, and allowing you to do more and more with the functions and features.
Okay, great. And then, simple management in the Zerto Cloud Manager. So this continues to be one pane of glass view of the environment. It centralizes, DR operations across environments. It really helps cloud providers get customers, applications up and running quickly, and to help manage multi-tenancy and the resource masking. So again, cloud providers that are using this already today, if you're an enterprise customer and you have several sites, this might be something you want to think about looking into. Okay. So increased resiliency. So we are always trying to make the product better. Enough is not enough. So, it's a stable, it's a very solid product, but we always want to put a little bit more into it because we know that you're using this to run your business. You need to make sure that your users have access to the right information, and you need to be able to service your customers. So we're always improving on the scalability, the maintainability, and Shannon actually had a good point around checkpoint durability, that it's, kind of improvements we're making that you might not even be aware of that we're making. So Shannon, you want to talk a little bit about it?
Sure. So on the checkpoint durability, the always recover feature, there was a manual process needed. So let's say, for example, you had a 4-hour journal and you have a 5-hour outage, but you wanted to maybe fail back to a point in time in that journal. Well, there was a manual step you would want to take in order to do that, which was pause the replication. That way, as soon as the sites were reconnected, the journal was getting refreshed. So what this always recover with the checkpoint durability adds is some checkpoints that are they're more sticky inside the journal, even if the window of protection maybe would be passed, to where I can still go to a checkpoint in that journal that should have been updated and new checkpoints in when replication resumes. So it's just one of those subtle things that, even though there was a process that allowed you to do that, we wanted to make it a little more bulletproof and have those always recover subset of checkpoints in there to make it more sticky. So we're always looking for ways to just make the product more resilient and easier to do things maybe that you weren't even expecting or knowing you needed.
Okay, and then traffic prioritization. So we've been asked this from a couple customers, so they want to make sure that certain applications get assigned certain priority in terms of bandwidth. So there's a couple ways you can do this. So one is just say, okay, all VPGs have access to whatever bandwidth they need, but I'm going to prioritize. So high VPGs will get replicated, they'll get the priority in terms of bandwidth, and then medium and then low. So this way you kind of always make sure that there's headroom there for large applications, and you can limit the bandwidth when you need to. Then you have the option below where you can say, okay, so high VPGs are always going to get 20%, and then medium and low VPGs get what's left. And this is, because during production, as you know, you'll be doing your other normal daily processes and things like that, that the high VPGs, even with those other things going on, are definitely going to get 20%, and then medium and low have to share with the other applications that you have running at that time. Okay, so we have so many questions, that's why I'm going to go a little bit faster through the feature summary. So since you're all Zerto Virtual Replication customers, or most of you are probably very familiar with all these things, what I will stress for anyone who's new is storage and hypervisor agnostic, so you can replicate to and from any kind of storage. We can replicate between different hypervisors. We've actually had some customers use this to kind of push back on their existing vendors that they're working with and saying, hey, you know, my maintenance is a little high here. Do you think you can help me out? Because I can move very easily to a different hypervisor or a different kind of storage. So, you know, we want to make sure that we're becoming more strategic in terms of your long-term plans. We didn't talk about a disaster recovery test. It's a very important feature for us, but it's been there since 1.0. So we have non-disruptive testing. Just like with the file level recovery, during the test, replication is still happening, you're still protected, and this will tell you exactly how long it's going to take to recover your environment. It installs really, really, really fast, you know, a few minutes. No configuration changes are required to your environment, so how you have everything laid out is how you would keep it. You don't need to make those changes. So, and then this is the second to last slide. So evolving with IT, that's absolutely our goal. So we started with hypervisors, working with managed service providers, and then going to public cloud. And then we'll be adding, you know, more and more public cloud, more and more hypervisors as you ask for them. So we want to make sure that we're becoming a strategic investment for you. And we want to make sure that we can get you to the point where you're looking at the SLA and price of an infrastructure. So if you want to go to cloud, well, which one? Well, here's what I can spend, and I need this SLA. Who can meet that? We don't want to you have to say, well, what kind of storage do you have, and do you match my protocol, and all those kinds of things. So we want to get you to the point where it's that flexible for you. And then before we jump into the many, many, many questions that we have, ZeroCon is in May here in Boston. It's our first really big business continuity conference with Zerto. We're very excited about it. We're going to have analysts from Gartner and from Forrester. The executive team will be there. We'll have a lot of sessions with customers, and we'll have sessions with our technical experts as well. So early bird pricing is still in effect, so you can still register for the discounted price. I encourage you to do so. And there's going to be some fun things too. We're going to have you know, a social event on the Tuesday night, and the welcome receptions at Fenway Park. So I've actually spoken with a couple customers, and they said Fenway is on their bucket list. I'm like, come to ZertoCon, cross it off. So, okay, so now the questions. So Shannon, how are permissions set around file level restore? Can you limit it to specific users having the capability to perform the file level recovery?
Now, I haven't tried this myself, so I would qualify it with you know, test yourself. But the idea of the permissions is to limit the use of what the end users can do. And I was looking, Jen, there's several questions from Justin that I think we really want to do a follow-up call because they're all very good questions. But this I want to make sure that we address all of the questions because they're certainly all in context of production. So I want to make sure that we follow up with you, Justin, with the call and run through your scenario and what you're looking at doing on everything. So I want to get that out there first, Jen.
Sure. So if you want, you can also feel free to email Shannon and myself. So my email is just jennifer@zerto.com. I'm happy to take your questions. If I can't answer, I'll get you to the right person. Shannon's is just shannon@zerto.com. So they're both pretty easy emails. We're happy to take your questions and put you in touch with the right person. Someone's asking, can we control throttling from pure storage to HDDs across a LAN?
Well, we can do it at the site level. We certainly can do throttling, and then as your previous slide, Jen, you were talking about priorities. So there's throttling, there's priorities, and there's different ways to do a timed bandwidth throttling. So we do have multiple features in there that can help. And since we're agnostic to whatever's underneath us, we'll also play with whatever's underneath us. So if you've got hardware compression, then you could actually uncheck some of the Zerto features, such as compression, if that makes sense to you. So I think it is a higher level answer. We do have ways of throttling to get to what you're looking for, and we also play well with your existing infrastructure or new components if you add for bandwidth control.
Okay, great. So someone's asking, we're still getting questions around the upgrade. Is it a straightforward process? Well, here's a comment that just came in. It says, thanks. I just upgraded to 4.5 while on this call. Can't believe how quick and painless it was. So that's from someone. That's not from Shannon and me. We weren't upgrading. We were presenting to you guys, so we couldn't have done it. But just to show you that's how quick and easy it is. I mean, it's very easy software to use.
Well, that was my experience when I upgraded my sites. It was remarkably simple. One thing we didn't mention, Jim, was the new installer. It's a very for people who like to see pretty installers. This one has a facelift, so it's got more capabilities, and it's quite nice. It's got a red splash screen and everything. So that was my experience as well. But as always, whenever you're doing upgrades, we always caution anything in production. Test it. Even though Zerto is very hands-off and non-disruptive, it's always wise to be prepared.
Yeah. So, and someone else actually said they did the same thing. So awesome. That's so cool that you guys are doing it. Well, that's how quick it is. Does introducing Zerto into an environment require disruption of the environment? That's absolutely not. It installs seamlessly into your existing infrastructure. You don't have to take anything down. You don't have to shut anything off. You don't have to change a VM. You don't have to change a LUN. You don't have to migrate a VM to a certain LUN. Nothing. It installs seamlessly into the existing environment. Based on the upgrades that happened during this webinar, I think that should show you just how really easy it is to use.
I would say that Zerto, we love getting it in your hands. So we give out free trials like free candy. So if you haven't tried us, just go ahead, download us, and try it for yourself. As you saw, we've had 2 upgrades on this call alone. So if that gives you any indication of ease of use, those are 2 good testaments.
Absolutely. And someone said, so can we do P to V? It's only V to V. So as stated a little earlier, Zerto only works in virtual environments. Only VMware, only Hyper-V, only AWS. Okay, so here's a question. So still need vCenter, still can't user ESXi hosts? Do you understand that question, Shannon? Maybe it's, do you still need vCenter?
Yes. And I saw another one, SCVMM, yes, you need that too. So think about what we're doing. Zerto Virtual Manager is interfacing with whatever the management is on the target platform. So for example, if it's VMware, we're talking to vCenter. If it's Hyper-V, we're talking to SCVMM. If it's a public cloud, such as AWS, we're working with their APIs to do their native things. We're just calling it by API there. So yes, you'll need the management platform for any of the platforms you're using, and let's look for that in the future as well. So as we add in things such as KVM, expect that as well.
Okay. Does Zerto support multi-site replication? So we support one source and one target right now. You can use offsite backups to sort of get a third site. So what that does is take a copy of the replicated data at the DR site, and then you can put that in Amazon. You can put that local. You can put it back at the production site. But we don't have multi-targets right now, if that's what you were looking for. That is a roadmap item, so check back with us. But that's not in 4.5. So Shannon, question for you. And so I assume does it, so I think they're talking about JFLR. Does journal file level recovery offer a granular item recovery for Exchange SQL?
Well, what you would do is, as I showed in my demo, you can do, say for example, the database level, you can recover, if it looks like a file, you can recover that, and then use the app to pull out whatever you want inside of it, a table, what have you. So if we're talking about specific application sort of agents that can drill in deeper, that's not part of journal file recovery now.
Okay. How are IP addresses handled at the target site?
So when we're building the VPG, so this is several ways of doing it. But the virtual protection group, you can have either a production IP address or a test network IP address, and you can set those that way. Through the API, you can now, with the management pieces of changing the networking settings and things in VMs, you could do it that way. And with scripting, you can do that as well, because pre or post failover testing, we allow scripts. So there's multiple ways to accomplish that, but the simplest answer is through the nice user interface. You've got a production IP address you can use, and it can be static or DHCP, and you've got a recovery testing network, say a bubble network, with a completely different IP address scheme that you can use as well there. So we're very flexible on allowing you to configure it the way that you really need to.
Okay, and someone's asking, will Zerto ever work in a Proxmox hypervisor?
The simple answer there is it's always based off of the demand. So we're just checking them off as we're getting the demand for them. And so I think you could look for something like KVMs probably next, because we've knocked out vSphere, we've knocked out Hyper-V. And so it's always, the important point to make here is that Zerto can support any of those, including public. So it just comes down to how much demand are we getting for that platform to be added.
Okay. So someone wrote, the 60% journal compression efficiency is awesome. Thank you. How does the journal space work? Do we need dedicated space allocated up front? Can we disable the compression, say in a SAN that already does inline compression and dedupe?
Yeah, so there you've got a few options. We've got a sizing tool that'll help you, but there's stuff in functionality within the journal itself that helps you as well, which is it's a flexible journal, so it'll expand and contract essentially depending on the I/O. And with the journal additionally being compressed, using our sizing tool, it will get you within in the safe guidelines of what you're expecting and what it should be, and with compression. One thing I can say, just from a production standpoint, that's not an overwhelming or a regular issue. Would you say, Jen? I wouldn't see that otherwise, like the journal is going crazy and it's filling up everything. We just don't see that as a practice, even with large service providers.
Yeah, we have a pretty good sizing tool, so it really gives you a nice estimate of what you're going to need, and then with a flexible journal, as Shannon mentioned, it doesn't usually cause any kind of problem or anything like that. Okay, Shannon, API question, you're better at those than me. So, are offsite backups built into the API libraries as well now?
It's not in this version, and I don't recall seeing it in the previous versions when I've looked at it. So, not yet. It is in our API document. If it's there, which I don't recall seeing, and I've been looking at it a lot lately, so I would say probably not, and it's not in this version either. So.
Okay. Does Zerto have anything built into for compliance, HIPAA, PCI, SOX, etc.? So, a couple things. We don't build Zerto specifically to meet a requirement, but we do find the capabilities within the product to meet their requirements. So, for example, HIPAA has a requirement that you need to be able to recover healthcare data and make it available in the event of a disaster. Now, there's a lot of ways to do that. We think that Zerto is the most efficient. You don't want to have a healthcare environment be down for an extended period of time, and for that, we find we have a lot of healthcare customers. So Bob Landing with Premier, he's done many events for us. He has 600 VMs, about 130 terabytes, and his RPO is right around 7 seconds, and his RTO is right around 30 minutes. And the only reason why it's that long at 30 minutes is because their QA applications team goes through and verifies that the VMs are up and running first. So the runbook that his application team was using is gone. Zerto takes care of that entire runbook, and now they just do the QA testing. For Sarbanes-Oxley, and I know SEC also has requirements that you have to be able to show you've done a DR test annually, and that's the recovery report that I showed right on the third slide. It was that teeny tiny box all the way to the right. So that recovery report satisfies audit requirements. So we don't say like we're a HIPAA tool or a PCI tool. We're a disaster recovery tool, and we support a disaster recovery strategy. And it usually lines up with what PCI has, what HIPAA has, and what Sarbanes-Oxley has. So, okay, how are you on time? Ooh, we have a lot of questions. Any plans to add RATV support?
Let's see that one. RATV.
It's way up at the top, 1:45 p.m.
Oh, Red Hat.
Oh, Red Hat. Sorry, I haven't seen that abbreviation.
Yeah. I thought you said RATV, and I'm like, I'm trying to think of the acronym. What is that? So the Cast OS is supportive of it. You're probably meaning their KVM version. There is again, it's a roadmap item based off demand. So the answer is always yes, because we can. It's just what's the frequency that we're seeing.
Okay. Is Zerto Cloud Manager part of the main product, or is it an add-on? So it's included. If you want to deploy your environment with Zerto Cloud Manager, there's no addition there.
Right.
Shannon, I believe. Oh, go ahead.
No, that was just piling on, actually. That's included. You can install it. You're paying basically for a protected VM anyway.
Yeah. Does the file level recovery capability work if you're using Amazon as your DR location? I think the answer is yes. Shannon?
Yeah, we had a discussion about that, and a couple people tested it, and I think the answer is yes. There's an associated feature that we haven't talked about in Amazon as well, which was we've added server-side encryption, which answers another question about how do we support encryption. So I think I knocked out 2 or 3 questions that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we need to structure our target location exactly like our production in terms of storage? No. You could have EMC on one side and Pure on the other. You could have HP3 part on one side. You could have Nimble on the other. It doesn't matter. Whatever you want to use for storage, because everything is done in the hypervisor. Let's see. Can I bookmark the journal from within the guest OS once per hour? For instance, in a batch file, can I run commands to freeze writes to my DB, then bookmark the journal so I can restore a consistent point in time? That sounds like the hot backup from Oracle.
Well, actually, that question, Mark, yes, is the answer to that. You can do a manual checkpoint in the journal for various reasons. It could be VSS. It could be that you just want to manually do it before you maybe do an upgrade or something. That's not necessary because we're always keeping checkpoints. They're within seconds of each other. So you could pick a point in time to go back to, but if you manually want to just make sure that there's a checkpoint, you can certainly. That's a scriptable operation.
Yeah, and okay, someone's asking, can I use Zerto to go between 2 different cloud providers? So yeah, you can. And we actually have customers who are starting to do that. They're getting out of the data center business and leveraging cloud providers. So you can use one for production, one for a DR. As long as they both have Zerto, you could do it that way. Or you could buy the licenses and do like infrastructure as a service and buy the infrastructure that way. There's a couple different ways I've seen customers do it. One is they'll go with one of our larger providers like Peak 10 who has several sites, so they'll have production on one side of Peak 10 and DR on the other side of Peak 10. Another is with an infrastructure service provider, then they'll do DR to Peak 10. And we have many other cloud providers as well, Island, BlueLock. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, and they're probably Not happy that I'm not mentioning them, but I'll be happy to mention any of them. We have over 220 cloud service providers globally, so you can get very creative in terms of how you use a cloud provider. We're lucky that we have very good relationships with about 250 of them globally, so there's a lot of flexibility for you there. Does Zerto support encryption? So if you encrypt using another device, yes, there's not encryption built into Zerto natively. So I know I'm going a little quicker, but it's because we're over the hour. I appreciate everyone staying on. Someone asked, is license per socket? So by protected VM, which Shannon already mentioned. So it doesn't matter the size of the VM. So if you have a 200 gigabyte VM or 200 terabyte VM, it's the same price. Hey, here's a question from someone I know. Will the same window write management for files apply when files are recovered from the journal? Shannon, over to you.
Yeah, so wherever you place them, of course, it's going to inherit the permissions, but this may be a question about accessibility to the source file. So you'd have to have admin permissions to pull those out to begin with, and then wherever you place them, of course, the Windows file permissions are going to apply. I think that was what the question was about, but it's just going to inherit where it's placed and where it came from. I think it's probably the best way to answer that.
Okay. And if you want to email me directly, if we didn't answer your question, just let me know. I'll do that. Someone asked, is there a specific license for migration? Yes, it is different. It's a one-time use license for a move that's also by VM, but it's obviously less than if you're using it for disaster recovery. Okay. We had a situation when the Zerto engineer had to modify the networking by connecting to our site. Are there plans to allow it to modify ourselves? I don't know if we have enough detail to answer that. Shannon, do you see it there?
No, but that may be around the that may be a VRA question. That's a case-by-case basis right now. It usually involves support if you're doing that. So I would say right now support would need to be involved. In fact, they do need to be involved in order to access those boxes.
Yeah. Let's see. What does the upgrade path look like for a service provider? I don't know that it will be different.
Well, that's, I think, one of Justin's questions, and I do definitely want to do a follow-up with Justin, get one of our guys on and just walk through. Okay. There's a specific path of Justin's question, so I'm going to make sure that we're getting the full environment as well as the question to give the totally correct answer.
Yeah, okay. Someone's asked you the fine-tune version 4 of Zerto at the target and 4.5 at the source. Yes. We replicate between different versions of Zerto too, as well as different versions of VMware and different versions of Hyper-V. Okay. So, Justin, as we mentioned, so since you've asked quite a few questions, I have your email from your registration, so I will get you in touch with the right people. I think every other question we have answered. Oh, here's one. Is the sizing tool enhanced so you can run it against vCenter to gather and provide sizing output, or is it manual entry into the spreadsheet? I think it's still manual entry. Shannon, do you know?
Yeah.
Okay. So we automate many things. Unfortunately, that was one thing we haven't mastered how to automate just yet. So we're way past 2 o'clock. I'm so thankful for all of you staying on for so long. If you have any other questions that we didn't get a chance to ask, or we didn't get a chance to answer it for you, rather, email me, Jennifer@zerto.com, or Shannon@shannon.com. So thank you so much for your time and attention, and have a great day.